Oh, hey there. Welcome to another edition of Morning Coffee with Alan. My name is Alan Combies. Here we are in our Facebook group, Morning Coffee Live. And I am a transformational coach. And if you're new here, welcome. Welcome to our group. What I like to do is just kind of check in once a week on Wednesdays between 9 and 9:30 Pacific time. And just share with you over some morning coffee. Some musings, some answering questions, things that are on my mind, things like that. Hey, Chris, what's up, buddy? Kate, Kathy, how are you? Are you laughing out loud? I can't. My eyes. I gotta work on my eyesight. My nearsightedness is fading. So today, I was thinking about. I was thinking about as usual, I was thinking about what are we actually up against, what is it that we're actually up against? And, the more and more I do this work, the more unapologetic I become about really looking at this, for lack of a better term, the spiritual aspect of who you really are. Because more and more, it's just apparent to me that, what gets us tangled up is the sort of construction of identity that we've created for ourselves. And when this identity that we've created for ourselves no longer serves us, we don't recognize that the identity is created. We think the identity is us. So in other words, we create a story about who we are, who we think we are, how we're supposed to be in the world, and what we're capable of, and then we wear it like a hat or like clothing or like a mask. And we think we're that story, but we're really not that story. And some of us will go to extremes to protect that story, to hold on to that story. And that's okay, unless you want to change, unless you're looking for change in your life. And so while a lot of my work is hands-on, I use tools like tapping, like hypnotherapy, to really help people sort of see beyond their stories. A big part of that conversation, a big part of that is this conversation about what, who you really are and how you're actually experiencing, what you're actually experiencing. And it just looks to me that if we spend time in that conversation, we begin to gain more clarity over our moment-to-moment experience. And we create more freedom for ourselves to drop out of insecure, stressful, troubled thinking and be open to new thinking. All right, so I've got some comments here already. Oh, Kathy, that was a hi from Kathy, not an LOL. My eyes, I'm telling you. Kathy says, Alan, I'm really working on changing the sick identity, but it's hard when doctors tell you have this or that. Well, yeah, and yes. And know that the doctors are doing what they are taught to do. And we, ultimately, I can't tell anybody not to go to a doctor. If I've got a physical ailment and I think that, it's like if I break my arm, I'm going to go to somebody who knows how to set the bone. But oftentimes, when we're talking about, people that come to see me, if there is a physical issue, the physical issue might not even be the reason they're coming to see me, but they happen to have this physical issue, or sometimes it is the reason they come to see me. But oftentimes they've been to doctors, and doctors say, there's physically nothing wrong with you. We don't know why you have these symptoms. And, I see this more and more, or I see this a lot. And all I can offer to that is prolonged stressful thinking, right? Identifying with that prolonged stressful thinking creates a lot of prolonged stress on the body, and the body will eventually, what are we talking about here? Constricted blood flow, lowered immune system, high levels of cortisol going through the system. And so, our bodies aren't designed to have this going on constantly. And so this is, and oftentimes when we've been doing that over and over again, it's become very, very habitual. It's become very, very habitual. And we may not even realize we're doing it, because at that point it's sort of like, hey, you're a fish in water, trying to explain water to a fish. It's like, what's water? What do you mean? You're so enveloped in it, you don't see it. And so that's why I think it's important to really listen to your body and listen to the symptoms. But rather than, go to a doctor, but recognize that doctors are approaching it from an outside-in model. So they are looking at your symptoms and looking for ways to treat your symptoms. Treat the symptoms, but at the same time, go inside and reflect on, okay, I've got arthritis, let's say. Could it actually be stressful thinking? And just reflect on that. Just reflect on, what if it was? And if it was, what would it be like to set that thinking down for a moment? Just imagine setting that stuff down for a moment. Now, it's interesting because I sometimes I'll share that with clients, and I'll see them physically relax. Physically relax, and sometimes they'll stay there for a while, And other times, I see them physically relax, and then they go, well, yeah, but what? And I say, well, wait a minute. Did you just notice that calm, relaxed feeling? Yeah, well, what just happened there? And what just happened was that they fell back into who they really are. They fell out of their thinking into who they really are. And then that was so unusual, so foreign to them, that they got insecure, and they went right back into their thinking. They went right back into their busy mind. Right? And this is very unusual. So really what we're talking about doing is breaking that habit of going up into the mind, the busy mind. Now, I just had a client yesterday, and she said, well, if I'm not in my busy mind, then aren't I just being a pushover, or a space head, or whatever? I can't remember what she said. And I get that, because it really seems like it makes sense to think more about our problems. It seems like it makes a lot of sense to do that. But that's going to continue to give you what you're getting. The heaviness, the pain, the stress. your experience is a reflection of what's going on up here, the busy mind, the busy thinking. Now, I'm not saying that we're supposed to walk around in bliss all of the time. No, but it is a matter of recognizing that your experience is fluctuating based on how much you're in your head and how much you're in the moment. That's it, you know. It's less about doing anything and more about recognizing that relationship. So Kathy says, oh, hi Christina, how are you? Kathy says, what if I were well? Kathy says, I felt that, awesome. I put down my story. Beautiful, Kathy, beautiful. Now you and I have had conversations, and I've seen you put down your story before. And so I know that you know what I'm talking about. So I would reflect on those moments. Reflect on those moments that you put the story down for a moment. And what that actually means. You know? What the implications are that you were able to put down that story. And what you may notice over time, and what you may actually, Kathy, already be noticing over time, is that you'll begin to wake up to the fact that you'll wake up to that busy thinking more and more. Does that make sense? Like when you're caught up in it, you'll begin to recognize that more and more. And if you can, you'll drop out of it. If you can't, you just go, okay, well, I know I'm just in busy thinking, and it'll eventually, I don't have to, because here's the deal. There really is nothing to do. And I know that sounds paradoxical. I know that sounds illogical. But there really is nothing to do. What gets us in trouble is thinking we need to do something about our busy mind. What gets us into trouble is we think we need to think more. Kathy says yes. Yeah, we think we need to do more thinking, but that's what's creating our experience in the first place. And so there actually isn't anything to do. Now again, I use tapping in my practice often, and that is doing something. But I'm helping my client do something from the perspective of acknowledging what's going on inside of them. In other words, I really find it helpful if I don't know if this is 100%, but to me, it's like if I'm feeling something heavy in my body, that's a good signal that I'm just, up in my head. If I'm feeling light and I'm feeling, kind of open, well, that to me is just a feeling that I've got better stuff on my mind or less troubled thinking, right? So I can use that. I can use that. If I'm feeling heavy, then I know what I'm up against. I know what's going on, and I can choose to do nothing and just sort of fall out of that. Or if I'm really in, a sort of a stuck rotation of going back and back and back into that, well, I can use tapping to sort of break that pattern. But if I don't know that that's what I'm doing, then I might misattribute this tapping thing. I might think that, I might think that all the power is in the tapping. Well, the power isn't really in the tapping. It's not in the aiming. It's not in the tapping. It's not in the submodalities and all of that. The power is in your realization. The power is in your ability to wake up to what's actually going on. Now, I often have clients who are very, as I mentioned earlier, that are very attached to their stories. And that's out of habit, it's out of insecurity. Oftentimes, they picked up their patterns of behavior from loved ones, and so they feel like if they let go of these patterns of behavior, that they're somehow letting go of that loved one, or they think that the stories are protecting them somehow. That's a very common one. And oftentimes those are the most, I'll say, stubborn clients. I use that in a non-judgmental way. But our stories can be stubborn if we think they're protecting us somehow. But if we reflect on that and we realize that the stories are simply protecting us from our own stories. They're protecting us from memories and experiences that we have had but are no longer happening. So in essence, we're fighting imaginary dragons. We don't need that armor. We don't need that armor, and I've had many clients describe it that way. Just worked with a woman yesterday who was talking about the armor that she's wearing, and she has stubborn stories. I worked with a veteran who, he was wearing armor, and it served him. It served him when it came to combat situations, very intense situations. But when it came to his friends and family, they all said he was disconnected. He wasn't present. And so something that psychologically was protecting him in a very real way was also getting in the way of him connecting more deeply with other human beings in different situations. And we traced it back, and it all went back to a very emotional experience with a parent. And once we saw that, once we realized that, once we made peace with that, well, the armor became less and less relevant. And he became more and more aware of when he was going back into that story. Hey, good morning, Vivian. Good to see you. So I hope this makes sense today. I'm just trying to think if I can sum up what I've said so far. So to attempt to sum up, more and more, it looks to me like this is a spiritual conversation, and I don't mean religious. I mean spiritual in the effect, in the way that, we are consciousness experiencing life through our bodies, through our brains. That's the mechanical aspect of it. And we are conditioned because, this body, this brain, functions in a certain way. And so we get conditioning. But those thoughts, this body, this idea of who you are is not who you are. These are like masks that we wear. These are like suits of clothing that we put on. And in addition to working on that conditioned thinking, if we begin to have this conversation more and more and reflect on how we are more than these bodies, more than these stories, well, that can do something for you. Sorry, I'm just checking the comments here. These talks are great. Thank you, Kathy. Vivian says, good to see you. Good to see you as well. And I'm so glad that you find these helpful, Kathy. You know, I think that, hey, Phyllis, good to see you. I think that having this conversation and looking in this direction is really one of the most important aspects of change work, of having an overall more pleasant experience of life. And that's all I want for you and for anyone else, is to really begin to have a more pleasant experience of life. Hi, Florence. Good to see you here. So, I've been talking for a while. I'm not sure how long. I'm thinking about 20 minutes or so. So if you just tuned in, go back and have a listen to the replay. I'd love to hear your comments, any other questions that you might have. And as always, I really, really appreciate you, and I appreciate being able to speak to you in this way. And for any of you who want to talk to me in person, you know, I offer free consultations, no strings attached. We can talk through what you're going through, and you know, I can share you know, different tools like tapping that I have with you. And if it makes sense for us to look at ways to work together, then we can talk about that as well. I will post a link in these comments below. You're welcome, Kathy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Vivian says, be happy, be blessed. Thank you, my dear. Same to you. And we will see you all in the next one. Take care now.